information I'll share here, and I think I've talked to Jude about this, and maybe even Robert. We belong to a thing called Scott's Cheap Flights, and they have transferred now their name to Going because there's so many more people than Scott involved, but it's free. You can sign up, and I get at least 1 or 2 emails a day about cheap flights, Asia, Africa, Europe, South America, Central America, and domestic. And we flew round trip from Chicago to Paris, nonstop on the way over there, 1 stop on the way back for under $500 each. So,
and it's now called Going?
Yeah. But I think they still listed under both Scott's Cheap Flights.
Right.
We're going to Ireland in June, and hopefully Greece in September. I'm going to take my daughters back to the area where my grandparents came from in Greece, so it should be hopefully fun.
Have the notes, honey?
Yep, they're on the table there. Yep.
Good.
Yep.
All right. So there's also an incredible program, well, not that we came across, called Go City, and it's all around the world. I didn't realize that until we went to Paris, but you know, whether it's New Orleans or, you know,
London,
anywhere,
yeah, so
any major city,
yeah.
this Go City is a fantastic resource because, you know, we're all busy. We can only do so much research, but they put together 2, 3, 4 day passes. And yes, of course, does it cost you? But by the time you get the tickets to all the things that it offers you, and the on and off bus and the attractions, you're paying less.
Plus, you could skip the lines.
And you can skip lines with the pass. So you can show them the pass and they say, okay, come on up to the front of the line.
Yeah.
It was great. And we did a 3-day pass, and it was $99 a piece, which at first you go, ow. But by the time you tried to enter all of these museums and get tour guides and everything, it was worth it. And we found that out when we were there. So find it out beforehand. It makes more sense.
So this is the subway. The subways were extremely clean,
Yeah.
on time. We used the subway because we came in from the airport via subway. But our friend Bob Postel did buses, and he recommended that because you're above ground, you can see everything as you're traveling, but we just got used to the subway, and that's what we did. And it was easy for the most part to find our way around.
Yeah, it was good. There is, with the Go City, this hop on, hop off bus. So that comes with it as well. You can get on a bus and go wherever you want to, get off, view the museum, whatever you want to do, and get back on a bus an hour or 2 later and go somewhere else. And it's all free if you have this pass.
Yeah, and they're clearly marked.
Made a lot of sense. And as you know, this is Notre Dame, but the only thing we wanted to say about that is that it was closed in 2019 because of that fire, which was devastating to the world. And it's one of the oldest and most well-known cathedrals in the world. They are renovating it, and it'll probably be open in 2024. Yeah.
Have they cleaned the outside, the front? Because it doesn't look charred at all.
There are parts up above that you can't see in this picture, but you can see. So down below here is the wall that's not allowing people in.
Right.
Yeah.
And then
Honestly,
behind here,
we don't know what they were doing. There was scaffolding on the, because I think the fire was the upper part, and the cross came down, that kind of stuff. So,
but the wall, which was wonderful, had all of this chronology about what happened and what they were going to do and when it might be finished.
Yeah.
So that was great. Okay. This was a boat that we took on the Seine, and it's a tour that you can do at day or at night. Again, that was part of the pass.
Yeah, the Eiffel Tower was not, they've
Right.
had separate.
So you just decide, okay, am I gonna do a day trip on the tour, a night trip? And then you just hand your pass over and they say, come aboard. And there's these long lines of
Yeah.
people waiting. You get to go to the front. Another really reason to have that pass made a lot of sense. And you saw the night scenes, day scenes. And of course, at the end, if you, anything more you want to see, fine, but I'm gonna pass through here. This was all on the Seine. I'm proud of this photo. It's not the whole thing, but
Rainy night.
yeah,
Question about this.
yeah.
This is the type of thing, that I look at, I haven't traveled, and I look at it and go, is it safe to be down there?
It was.
Mhm.
So this is
So you
a,
felt comfortable.
Good question.
this walkway here is maybe 12 to 15 feet wide. It's
Mhm.
right alongside the river. The lights are intermittent like that. There
Mhm.
was one spot where there were a group of younger people drinking and talking and stuff. Honestly, the only time we felt
Unsafe was on the subway.
the subway police. Yeah, I mean.
Well, and the people who pickpocket you, which
yeah.
happens all over Paris.
Yeah, but we did feel safe and.
We did.
The typical thing, and when we were both there 20 or 30 years ago, the French were not very friendly. And I took 4 years of French in high school, tried it out, realized that I didn't learn French. What I learned was the accent of an Iowa farm wife who was speaking French, and they had no idea. And they were very almost belligerent. If they did not want to speak English, they looked down on you. And we didn't feel that.
No,
This time.
if anything, again, except for the pickpocketing, which we can tell you about later, but if anything, the people were so kind.
Yeah.
And there was one time where we came up, I think it was at the Moulin Rouge, and we had our bags and everything, moving to a different Airbnb from Paris proper, going to Montmartre, and we come up to the subway. Oh, now where do we go? And right away, this guy came over to us and said, it looks like you're lost. Can I help you? With a French accent, but in English.
Mhm.
And it was so lovely. It was great.
So, yeah, we did feel.
Maybe it's
safe.
because we were old.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a beautiful photograph.
Yeah. I want to paint that. All right. So those were the street vendors.
Yeah, along the Seine.
Along the Seine. And so at the street vendors, you can get this for $10. It's a nice scarf, and it has, some of the, I don't know, Eiffel Tower or whatever, they have all different colors and all of the things. And I got those for gifts because they were cheap, but hey. And there's another one, a lighter one. So those they are all about selling those,
Mhm.
which I think is better than tchotchkes. At least you can use them. All right.
And you didn't have any problem transacting like
Oh,
money wise?
No, because-
Yeah.
We did use euro. And
We did.
euros, at least when we were there, was basically 1-to-1.
Okay.
€1 is $1, roughly.
but we were saying earlier today in the presentation, worldwide, we've come to a point that you go anywhere in this world and you'll find English.
Yeah.
Now, had it been 20, 30, 40 years ago, you might have struggled, and it probably would have been good to carry, a translation book. You hardly need to do that anymore.
How'd you change your money? Did you use the ATM just to get euros or?
They had little booths. There was one
Yeah.
in the airport, and then there was one that we encountered along the street.
Mhm.
And they basically just changed, and they would show you the exchange rate digitally there and on your receipt.
And weren't there some places that accepted American money too?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and of course, credit cards
yeah, credit cards.
that's the easiest.
Yeah.
And most people accept credit cards.
Yeah. So honestly, it was so easy to travel.
It
there.
really was. So this was the Arc de Triomphe.
Mhm.
And these, who is that old man?
Yeah, we had a couple of friends over to preview this and one of the ladies said, who is that old man? Well, it's me. And what I like about this, besides the spiral pattern, there's a couple of hands right here
Right.
with blue sleeves. I just, and we, on the way up, we had to stop probably 4 or 5 times to let younger people pass
Oh,
us.
yeah.
But we made it all the way to the top and going down's a
A lot
lot
of
easier
steps.
than going up.
Oh, what? What are those steps within?
Up
So-
to the top of the
Yes.
arc,
Arc to
so
front,
that from
yeah.
the top, you can see the Eiffel Tower, you can see a
Yeah.
lot of the city,
Yeah,
all the way
it was
around.
definitely worth it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was, if you can climb that many
Yeah.
steps.
yeah.
This is nighttime, when we came down from the arc, and it had already turned to night, and that's underneath the arc.
But the steps that go up one of the columns, so.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah, it goes up one of the columns,
Right.
yeah.
And then you saw all the food shots, yum, yum, yum. So,
Why don't you tell them a little bit about the cuisine? Cause
yeah,
Karen's a really good cook.
was
and-
interesting. You know, I was all excited about the French cuisine, hearing so much about it. And of course, croissants and French onion soup, the typical fare that we've heard about and are used to. But honestly, we went to 3, probably 4 fancy restaurants while,
Not top tier, but
right,
more than what we would usually,
right,
yeah.
right. And everyone had the same fare on the menu. What is it called? The foie de gras, yeah, foie gras, foie gras.
Liver, whatever it is.
Right. And of course I had to have it because I'd heard about it, and every menu had that on it. Every menu had French onion soup. It was no different at any restaurant.
Was it targeted to Americans, do you think, or do you think you were eating in neighborhoods?
No, we
don't know.
purposely looked it up and went to neighborhood restaurants because that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
Still the same. I'm not saying you wouldn't enjoy it. I'm sure you would. I did. But after 2 or 3, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
I've experienced
The
it.
options, yeah. And we had 2 or 3 that were really good, tasty food, and then probably
Yeah.
more than half that were pretty average.
Yeah.
really.
Hmm.
Prices weren't crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, they were certainly more than Ford, obviously.
So
but
come over to the Reinhardt Cafe
Yeah,
whenever you want.
Rodin's.
Rodan. All right. That is down here.
Yes.
Well, we don't get the pastry like they have.
No, that's true.
No.
Fair enough.
Or the breads.
And he's the sweet tooth and I am not, but breads, croissants, all of that, no.
Yeah,
The only place, at least in the Midwest, that I feel we can get them is in Chicago. That's the only place if you want crusty, good bread. And then out of the Midwest, New York, and I was born and raised in New York, we had good bread. Midwest, not
and
so
I do
much.
have a sweet tooth, but I honestly, the stuff there was just way beyond me. I mean, it was just sugar on sugar. And they looked amazing.
They do.
But I wasn't tempted. Yeah, so this was where Rodin lived. And he was, I guess Karen said, was the father of sculpture.
Mhm.
So
He was
this was
considered.
almost like a production factory here. He was the main guy. And by the way, this is definitely worth going to, the Rodin
Guess I
Museum.
could do that.
On my list, so.
He lived there, and he would start things out and rough them out, and then he had a production team of younger people that would kind of finish him off. His first famous one was called Man with a Broken Nose, and it's just a bust, a head of this guy that's clearly gotten cocked in the nose.
It's not cut off, it's just
No,
broken.
bent to the side, yeah. And he, at one point, he was married. He was in his 50s and he had an affair with a woman that was late teens. That was one of his students, a very talented woman, and had an affair with her, and then ended up going back to his wife.
And the woman he had an affair with was extremely talented
Right.
also.
and,
as a
and
sculptor.
her most famous work was him leaving and going back to his wife, and she's begging him like that. And she ended up going crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, he also did The Kiss.
Mhm.
So The Thinker, The Kiss, and The Gates of Hell are the three
Was
of,
this his childhood home or his
No,
adult home?
when he was mature.
Right.
It is, and it had wonderful grounds, pathways,
Oh.
gravel pathways.
that was more amazing, I think, than the museum
Yeah.
or house itself, because they were so well manicured. And then all of these sculptures
Yeah.
around all of the grounds, and so much so that you could barely get to
Yeah,
all of them.
Yeah.
It was a
we were
museum in and of
saturated there.
itself.
Yeah,
And we went in October. The weather was absolutely perfect.
yeah.
It wasn't
T-shirts.
too hot, it wasn't too cold. We just were able to enjoy the,
The outdoors,
yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was great.
Yeah, so the Thinker was actually outdoors in the garden. Yeah.
So you probably didn't have too many tourists, kind of like.
Right, that too. There you go. Yep, we
Yeah.
did not. Yeah. Cause it's not a typical time of year. Springtime in Paris, right? That's the typical time to go. One thing about Mona Lisa, so
Did you
both
have
of
the
us
Gates
had
of
been
Hell
in
on there?
Paris years ago.
Karen, did you have the Gates of Hell on there before we?
Oh,
went
do you want to
Louvre?
see the Gates of
Yeah.
Hell? Sorry.
Yeah, you would be interested in that, Robert. It was amazing. I mean, most of his stuff
Luciento.
here, he
Ah,
did
back.
stone, marble sculpture, but he did a lot
Let
of
me see if I
casting
can-
in,
These are bronze, right?
yeah. So,
I'm just gonna
Well,
make
look
it
at that.
bigger.
yeah, I mean, the intricacy, and this is based on Dante's Inferno. So here's a smaller version of the Thinker. The Fates up here, I think, and then all the tormented souls here. And I mean, it's just amazing. He had another one that was a three-dimensional bronze also that was on the grounds here. It was called the Burghers of Calais. And the story behind that was that England had come over and attacked the town of Calais, which was on the French coast. And the King of England made a deal that if the 6 leaders of the town would give themselves up to be killed, he would spare the town. And his sculpture is these 6 guys walking off to their death.
To their
And
doom, their death,
I mean, it is amazing.
but they were saved.
Yeah, because the Queen was impressed with their bravery.
Conviction.
And, yeah,
Hmm.
but that's an amazing.
Yeah, so it is,
And
it's
the
so
town of
intricate.
Calais didn't like it because it showed some guys afraid and some guys with doubts, I mean, he sculpted it the way human condition would be.
And
And they
feelings.
refused to pay him for it, so,
This is.
yeah, he faced a
outside
lot of
the loop.
actual harassment as an artist. I
Mhm.
mean,
Well, many of them did.
Yeah.
Van Gogh,
Yeah,
I mean, many of them,
not accepted.
right? We just put this, like I said, as a juxtaposition of modern art. And these were bigger than we are.
Yeah, they're 5 or
They're
6
huge.
feet. Yeah.
And, yeah,
So that
depends
was
on what
the
you're into.
Tuileries there. It's the Louvre behind there, which was huge. I mean, we kind of just dipped through it. But the Tuileries are public gardens that are probably 6 blocks long that run along the Louvre, and just gorgeous.
Yeah, it definitely meant to be seen. And everybody knows the pyramid to the entrance to the Louvre, which is also very controversial
Mhm.
because it's so modern. And then you have the Louvre. And so this is just inside the pyramid, but you can go on the internet and see, what the pyramid looks like.
How long did you spend in each one of these places? Like hours, an hour?
No, because you would die.
Yeah.
Yeah. you can get saturated.
Yeah.
So there's 3 main art museums. D'Orsay is the one that we went to first. It's an old railroad station. The architecture is wonderful.
Mhm.
And they had a big section of Impressionists there, which is what we enjoy with the color.
And that was our favorite.
Okay.
So we went there first,
Mhm.
spent, I would say,
Couple of hours, an
At
hour and a
least.
half.
I'd say 2 or 3,
Okay.
maybe even, yeah. And then
Fine.
from there it went down. The next
Yeah.
one was L'Orangerie, which was all
Monet.
Monet, the water lilies and that stuff, and it was really an interesting building. It was a huge oval. And his paintings were on the wall and they were probably 8 feet by 30 feet. I mean, they were
Yeah.
these huge panels.
And there was a big couch, round couch in the middle. So you could sit on this couch, you could look at this wall, sit here, look at that wall, and keep turning around. But
Well, I
Wasn't-
like his, like the haystacks and there was a cathedral at Rouen, I think, that he painted. His big deal was to paint the same thing at different times of day so that the light was different on it.
yeah,
So he had like, I don't know, 20 haystacks, the same
Yeah.
haystack, but different lighting on them. And by the time he got to doing the water lilies, he was in his late 80s at least, and he was nearly blind. And to me, it showed. I mean, they were colors and, you know, if you stood back far enough, you could see it. I didn't catch the charm of it
Yeah.
all.
and then I think our second favorite was Rodin,
Yeah.
that museum. And the Louvre you have to go to because of Mona Lisa and then anything else that's there. And don't spend any more time than at least, at the most, 2 to 3
I mean, it's
hours.
huge.
Because
It's
again, you'll
probably,
go crazy.
I would say it's at least 4 city blocks, the
Yeah,
Louvre.
yeah.
It's huge. And so we went in to experience it, just kind of meandered around, maybe an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then. by
And did
then
you
we
mention L'Orange?
Yeah,
L'Orange,
that was a.
Okay.
But
yeah.
the Louvre also has all the classical and there's a lot of
Right.
great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you want to see
Oh,
other things. you know,
yeah.
Right. I mean, the main thing about the Louvre is that it's the Mona Lisa, but it is the world's largest museum. And it, I think, goes from, I don't know, the early 1800s, I mean, yeah, way back to now. And
Well, even way back farther than that, I mean, ancient,
ancient.
yeah.
And then the Musée d'Orsay, that art goes from 1848 to 1914, but it also is all walks of art. It's not just paintings and it's sculptures and photographs and everything that artists did.
Actually, was it the Monet one? I think they had an exhibit downstairs. And it was a couple of guys that, well, one that I
The
hadn't
art,
heard
the
of.
photographs.
It was very interesting.
Yes.
And then Edvard Munch, the guy that did the screen, they had an exhibit on him. Wow.
It was
The screen
amazing.
is very representative of his work. That guy was whacked out. And it was easy to understand. I mean, his family, he was probably the most sane one of his family. And that's what he painted, was stuff like that.
And
it
he
was
did the
interesting.
scream in so many different
Yeah,
ways,
variations, yeah.
which artists do, but
Yeah,
it
it
was
was,
crazy.
it was very striking, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, so let's
Mona
get to
Lisa.
some more person. Yeah, well, they don't need to see that, but I mean, you know, the Mona Lisa. Oops, go too fast. Okay, here we go. So this was nice outside of the Louvre. You had, they have this street vendor patisserie and they do the crepes and, yeah, so we just saw him and said, oh, let's stop, let's try a crepe.
Yeah.
And it was great. And then we also took a picture of this American tourist right here. Where is he?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
that guy.
buying the crepe.
Yeah.
And this is cool. So these carousels, you'd come up out of the subway and it was a little community, little neighborhood. And I think 2 to 3 neighborhoods, you'd come up out of the subway and they'd have these carousels. It wasn't just one. So they just, and with cafes by them, and the kids go and on the carousels. It was great. It was pretty cool. And then, did you want to talk about the Eiffel Tower a little bit?
I've got a couple of facts of the Eiffel Tower.
Okay.
And it's interesting, on the way back, there was a movie on the plane about Charles Eiffel creating this. And it was for the 1890 World's Fair. It was supposed to be the centennial of the French Revolution. And they wanted it right by the Seine River, which was marshland. So what he did was he put in pilings for the 4 feet where it would start off. And because the water would be coming up through it, he worked with, air pressure to keep the water down to the point where some workers had to be taken out with blood coming out of their ears. And once they got the 4 feet coming up like this, and they're building this thing, and he was putting in nuts and bolts at that point, because originally this was only supposed to be up for 20 years. They were supposed to take it down. Well, when they got the legs up, there was so much furor about it. Artists said, this is ugly, this is going to dominate the landscape, we don't want this. And so the bankers withdrew their financing, and he had to finance it himself. After that, he didn't put screws and bolts in anymore. He put rivets. He said, if I'm going to finance it, this thing is not coming down. And so anyway, a few figures about this: 7,000 tons of iron, 2.5 million rivets, 7 million visitors each year. Every 7 years, the tower is painted by 125 volunteers. They put on 60 tons of paint each time. It's amazing.
It's kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah. And his biggest challenge, it's very windy there. So he had to design something that would not blow down in the wind. So the lattice work and everything. And on a very windy day, it will vary 4 inches side to side. And like the day that we were there, you could only go up to the 2nd level. You couldn't go all the way up because it was so windy. And I don't particularly like heights. And we're up there on the 2nd level. So we're, I think, 180 feet up.
Yep.
Like 18 stories, I think it was, something like that. And the wind is just whipping. And that picture, you can
And he's
see,
going,
oh my God.
"Ooh."
Take the picture quick.
Can you imagine if he was up any higher?
Do you feel that was enough? We have the 2 floors, because that's.
Oh, yeah.
Controversy of 2 floors or.
Yeah, honestly, I wasn't planning to go up the rest of the way. And they do have a fiberglass floor. It's not real big, maybe 6 by 6, that you can stand on, and you can see down all the way down 180 feet.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was enough. There are modern elevators now that you can take. Otherwise, you can climb up.
And we climbed.
We climbed. And one interesting thing, though, there was a young woman that was our guide, because you have to have a guide to go up. And I said, are you German? And she said, no, I'm Ukrainian. And she was probably in her early 30s when the war started. She and her 4-year-old son and her mother had taken off out of the country, went through Poland. And when they came to France, there was a French family that had 4 sons, took them in for 6 months. And she had gotten this job guiding, and they had just that week moved into their own apartment. And she had a photo that she was very proud of.
On her phone, because we were
Zelensky.
talking to her, and she was, when you really engage with people, of course, they're thrilled about it. And you want to hear their story. It was very important to us with what's going on in Ukraine. And she felt so, I think,
Validated,
really,
supported.
supported, and like we were listening as United States citizens. We were listening.
Yeah. So she had a photo of her and Zelensky when he was a comedian before he got elected.
She did. She pulled her phone out. She said, "Look at this." I have a photo with him.
Yeah.
It was so sweet. And then we would have her photo, however.
Yeah. So I had a pair of pants that had a zipper pocket on one side and Velcro on the other. And I put my wallet in the zipper pocket thinking that was the priority. And I put my phone in the Velcro, got pickpocketed. I mean,
It is
warn
the
you
biggest
everywhere.
thing in Paris, more than any other city except for I lived in Cuenca for 6 months, Ecuador. More than any other city I've ever known. They announce it
everywhere.
constantly on the subway, everywhere.
What did you take? Did you take like a purse? Like I have a purse that's now got, it locks when you zip it and all that kind of stuff. It has the anti yada yada.
Yeah.
Is that enough?
What did
Plus
I
we
had
had a waist
had a waist pack.
Okay.
And a lot of times we left her stuff in
Man, yeah,
Airbnb, and
'cause
would
I
just
didn't
take my
need-
credit card. Yeah.
I make him pay for everything, so. But I have seen this thing on Facebook lately. It's an advertisement, but a man purse, but it's flat. It's totally flat. It's about this big. You wear it, you strap it inside, and it has different pockets. And think about it. If you have a jacket on or even under your t-shirt, nobody's gonna get to that. They're not gonna get into your pants.
So I'm thinking I gotta lift my shirt and grab my
Yeah.
jeans.
Well,
I wanna get undressed.
that's true, especially under your t-shirt. This is true. Yeah,
It is significant, so be
Okay.
aware of that.
you never know. They might like the,
Well, I don't know about that.
that was in the subway. So
Yeah.
this was a picture taken just because there's art everywhere. This is the subway wall.
Yeah, coming up. on
And
the
it's a
subway.
mosaic, not a photo. Yeah, that's a mosaic.
So this is the story here. So we got pretty good at using the subway. And there was one stop that we always got off, and it was like 3 or 4 blocks to our Airbnb. And one night I said, let's go one more block or one more stop. It's the Bastille. And I wanted to see if there was anything significant there. As we're coming up out of it along that walkway there with the artwork,
The
it
stairs.
starts to back up. There's a bottleneck, and this guy is at the top with his 2 cohorts, and he's saying, show me your ticket, that little thing like that. So we did. He takes it and he says, give me your passport. Well, I did. And he said, well, you need to come over here. I may give that back to you. And at that point, I started getting wound up. And I said, oh yeah, you're going to give me back the passport. And he said, this ticket needs to be signed on the back. He said, you owe us.
This ticket,
Yeah.
this
And I
little
said,
ticket.
I bought it.
It's a
from-
5-day pass. You
Yeah.
could get 2, 3, 4, 5-day passes. Ours was 5, so we were legit.
Yeah, it was still valid.
Yes.
And we had bought it from a woman that had a little
A ticket booth
ticket
in
booth
the
in the
subway.
subway. She worked for the subway.
Mhm.
She hadn't said anything about it. I mentioned that, and he said, oh, it's everywhere. Everybody knows. You owe us $35 each. If we have to call the police, the fine doubles. Give me your credit card. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm in a foreign country. It's late at night. It's 10 o'clock at night by this time. I don't want to deal with the police. Gave him the credit
And
card,
I'm thinking,
which lit her up.
this is BS. Oh, I got in his face and I actually got mad at him because he handed over the credit card
She said,
so
I'm gonna take a
readily.
picture. So that picture of him
Right,
is him putting his face right in her camera.
yeah.
And so,
I said, we're reporting you. We're reporting you.
so that was a Sunday
He
night.
said, go ahead.
Yeah, he was really,
And so that
Was it really?
no, it was real.
they had Metro uniforms on and they were real. And actually they had those credit card machines
Yeah.
Yeah.
where you put the credit
little
card
reader,
in
yeah.
and so, yeah, but then we called the US Embassy that night and explained to them what had happened and how angry we were as US citizens. And they did say it happens all of the time. It's not right. They shouldn't be doing this. And we're having trouble with this. But then, so the next day,
Yeah, so I called them first thing in the morning when the embassy opened, and the woman that answered the phone transferred me to another woman that sounded about 12 years old. She took down the facts and everything, and I said, well, I would still like to come and file a
formal
complaint.
complaint.
Yeah, face to face with somebody.
Right.
She said, you're welcome to come by. So we walked probably 5 or 6 blocks, and the embassy grounds was probably 3 city blocks, big iron fence. And the first thing we saw was a guard booth, the guy black head to toe with a machine gun right there. I mean, there was obviously you were not going to mess around with
It
these
is
people.
scary.
So we
It was
walked up
US
to
Embassy.
the entry point, which is this. And as I'm explaining why we're there, this guy from the other side comes up. He's probably 6'2", 3-piece suit. And he says, oh yeah, this is the guy that called on the phone, meaning me. So he actually knew who I was. Because we had the computer, they wouldn't let Karen actually go in. She had to stay here and
With
she
them.
snapped this.
I snapped this real quick, as you can see, and out of focus guns and thinking, I don't know if
'cause
I'm
they
allowed to
had
snap
machine
this shot.
guns. Yeah, and they took me in. this big black guy, very, muscular, young, in shape, took me down into the embassy, down this hallway, and there was a series of rooms, probably 5 foot by 5 foot, just a little square. And he said, open the door, said, go on in there, somebody will be with you, close the door. So I'm sitting in there, absolutely by myself, and I'm thinking, this is how people disappear,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I might never see him again,
Yeah.
but it is the US Embassy.
Well,
Still.
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
I felt the power of our country. I mean, the combination of them knowing the detail, that they knew who I was,
That was really strange to walk up to this tent and we're walking toward them and saying, yeah, well, we put in a complaint last night and we were in mid-sentence. And
Yeah.
this,
Guy
like
comes
you said,
up.
came with the suit and tie, he said, they're okay. We know about who they are and we got the complaint. How did he know that?
Yeah, well, they were taking care of business.
Right.
So, then a young woman came into this room and it was like one of those, thick glass thing with a pass under thing. And, it was a woman that I had talked to on the phone, the same woman. She had a folder with all the details. I mean, it was amazing. And, she took the report, showed me a website where we could go and file a complaint. Told her about my phone being taken. She said, you need to go to the police station.
Which was
She gave me a
Judo.
map of how to get there. I mean, it was,
Yeah,
so it was the thing at night with the French subway police and then the embassy the next day. And that was the most remarkable experience. I was amazed.
except then there is the other way of looking at it. Is that Big Brother who knows who we are and how,
Well, they
and they
took care
can
of
find
us.
out through our phones? Yeah, of course.
To get your passport back.
Yeah, oh,
Yeah.
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 Once they had our money, then.
This was our tour guide in Montmartre. She was lovely and she dresses the part, as you can see. And we're standing in front of Picasso's hangout. I don't think it was his place. It was a hangout right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other one we just took because it was interesting. Oh, come here. Let's finish this up. A lot of musicians and street artists. It was great. This is the Wall of Love, or I Love You Wall. So there are 250 languages that I Love You is written in.
Mhm.
It was an artist who designed it in 2000, and it has 311 I Love Yous in any number of languages. But what we did is, so if you can see back here, oh, it's not in this picture because I had to expand it, but we stood right up above the English I Love You. So that was in Montmartre. This is Sacré-Cœur, and you saw the inside, and it's
Beautiful.
actually, this is the highest point in Paris. So what's great is that you go to Sacré-Cœur and you look around and you have a panoramic view of the entire city of Paris, and you can see how small you feel. We're pretty tiny.
And you can go inside, but you can't go up anything, can you?
No, we just went inside, but yeah, they didn't say anything about going up. And there's our little artist. You show him the painting.
Yep.
That's the painting we bought. Yeah,
Had it framed here.
and he was sweet. We,
Yeah, it is.
It
caught our eye.
yeah, and he said in French accent, "Are you sure you want that one?" I mean, I did that years ago.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, that's the one we like." He said, "Okay." And we said, "How much?" He said, "What?"
Well, I had no idea.
Right, we had no
I
idea.
didn't want to embarrass the guy, so I said, no, you tell us. He said $200. And Karen said 180, and he goes, oh, businesswoman.
So that was kind of funny. I didn't mean to do that. Whoops, come back here. Okay, so this, how did that get so small? Oh, here we go.
That's where Van Gogh lived for 2 years with his brother, Theo.
Come on.
And Van Gogh in the early days painted in browns. It was classical style. And when he lived here for 2 years, he discovered color. And that's when he became who he was. And he's my favorite artist.
Yeah.
So I was pretty thrilled to be where he is.
And that also is Montmartre,
Mhm.
not far from where we were in an Airbnb. And this is just to show that, okay, this is an apartment complex,
With-
but they have statues.
mhm.
You know what?
Art everywhere.
This was also just to show, again, we have water fountains, right? This is a water fountain. And the same type was throughout Paris.
Yeah.
They just, everything has to be art. And the rest of
Where is that?
this one,
Yes.
It's-
doesn't it look like a castle
It's in Paris.
in
Yeah.
Paris?
Yeah.
No particular place?
It's a residence?
Yep,
Oh, my.
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Hmm.
This was just another archway. Oh, and you definitely have to go to the Champs-Élysées, which is on the way to the Arc de Triomphe, and it's just a big, beautiful street that goes for a couple of miles, and with, of course, very expensive
And at
shops.
one end of it is where they had set up the guillotine.
Right. And then the rest, these were, so you can see, oh, you can't, but tables were like this far apart in outdoor cafes. So you can't not talk to your neighbor. Otherwise, it's weird. So these were German mother and daughter, and we started talking to them. They had really good English. And we were talking about Paris and, you know, their visit and why they were there. And toward the end of our talk, they said, you must come and visit us in Germany. You must, you must. And then we continued talking, and it comes to find out that the mother and I share the same birthdays. And she was ecstatic. She was,
Yeah.
this was meant to be. You know, oh my God, serendipity. Yeah, so it was fun. Typical French onion soup fare
Yeah.
with crusty bread. And I think we're nearing the end of what we want to talk about here. Somebody asked us this afternoon, are there a lot of stairs? Well, yeah, these were, but
It was in-
most of the walking is up these windy, curvy streets, so it's not that bad, but these were. And then we just took a lot of pictures of the outdoor cafes and restaurants.
Mhm. You
Didn't
should show
eat,
them the one with the cook.
oh yeah. So this, we took this picture. I
We're
don't know
gonna
if
show
I-
this
let
to
me get
Bill
it bigger.
Kaplan because this
Yeah,
kitchen is actually smaller than the one in the car.
well, if you look at this, so there's his elbow, that's that
Counter.
counter, and there's his belly, and that's that counter.
And behind him is the third side.
That's
Yeah,
it. That's how
his
big
kitchen.
that kitchen is.
And they turned out wonderful.
Yeah.
food. That was where we ate the last night we were in Paris.
And so he let us come in the kitchen, and he was sweet. It was, yeah, everybody was so kind. And this is the cemetery
Mhm.
at the end. And this is,
Marcel.
yeah, Marcel Marceau.
Oh,
And we had some music of some street musicians, but it didn't translate into PowerPoint, or at least that I could find,
Yeah.
for this evening. So, but it was fun.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
a great
We
time.
had a great time. I think we covered Scott's cheap flights, and Go City, which are the most
what
important
did you
thing.
use for the VRBOs or?
We did Airbnb, not
You did
Verbo, which was fine. Either one is fine, I think.
We've used both.
We've used both.
Yeah.
And why did you move?
Because we wanted to be, they're called arrondissements, which is different subdivisions throughout
Oh.
Paris, and there are 20 of them. Now, if you look online, 12 in particular are recommended, but we stayed only at 2, and that was where we were for the museums and then where we were for Montmartre.
You know, we wanted two different experiences.
And they're far enough away from each other that it wasn't worth staying at one and go traveling back and forth to Montmartre. So we stayed at the one for the museums for 4.
Yeah, and the
5
first
days.
one, the one by the museum had this huge tub with whirlpool jets. Was fantastic. We go hike, and every night we'd have a meal and then go back to the water pool
Yeah,
jets.
let's have a hot tub. And then we went to Montmartre. So, yeah, our
Was two
Airbnb.
totally different. I mean, it was almost like two different cities and two different.
Yeah, oh,
experiences.
definitely. And we, as interesting, it depends. I mean, many people aren't museum people. You can get bored very quickly depending on where your head frame is at. Of course, Paris is different, very historical, interesting artworks.
Mhm.
But once we were there for 3 days of museums and went, okay, we're ready to get out of here. And Montmartre is a fun part of
Every day we
Paris.
would just walk out of our Airbnb and just take a street and wander. It was awesome.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah.
And you run into so many people and talk to them.
Are the churches open for public access?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Even the small neighborhood churches?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was
Well,
a
they're
very
tourists.
clean, safe city. I mean,
Yeah.
we really never,
Except for pickpocketing.
yeah,
But as far as like any mugging or anything.
yeah. Never felt threatened at all.
No.
I read
Anywhere.
somewhere that the pace, you know, if you sit down in an outdoor cafe or something, that the pace is very relaxed, very
Yeah.
slow, and you can linger. and-
Oh,
They never moved us on.
never.
We get a glass of wine, maybe
Right.
a second one, and we could be there for hour and a half
Yeah.
or whatever.
Or
Yeah.
more.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just delightful. It's the kind of place where if you had the ability, I would say, when we ran into a young couple
Mhm.
from US that has, because of COVID, they
Working.
work from home.
Yeah,
So they can work anywhere. And that's what they did. They went over to Europe and they were traveling Europe for about 4 or 5 months
had just gotten married, had no kids.
and still working.
Yeah.
But they moved from country to country to country. And when we met them, of course, they were in Paris and enjoying Paris and were staying at an apartment. And we're ready to move on to Hungary not too long after. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing.
Different world.
Yeah. So it's doable for us again because it's got cheap flights.
Mhm.
Although that's getting up in price again
Sure.
because of COVID's now over. When COVID was going on, nobody wanted to travel and it was really cheap. Now the airlines are pumping.
Yeah,
it
we
up.
had a trip scheduled for Greece right at
Yeah,
the beginning
yeah.
of COVID. Round trip Chicago to Athens for just over $400 each, and we had to cancel that.
And now it's running 900 to 1,200. Yeah.
Yep. So.
You
any
luck
other
out when you luck
questions?
out. Yeah, any questions?
Just over an hour. We did pretty good,
No, I didn't get this in Paris. I've had it for years and years.
but you did get.
But I did get these
Stockings.
stockings at this cute little shop. I saw these in the window and it was tiny. It was probably as big as right here. And it was this little old guy, gray hair, French guy, and he sold accessories, gloves, scarves, stockings, and hats. That's all he sold. And so we went in because I saw these in the window. I said, oh, I gotta get those.
Yeah,
And I would have gotten 3 or 4 more, but they were probably about 25 a piece. I don't need that many stockings.
yeah.
So, but for fun,
Mhm.
yeah. And then the scarves were well worth the price to give out as gifts and everything. I mean, this is for lightweight in the summer, and this is really, you
Pretty
know,
substantial.
yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
pretty high.
And all
quality.
different colors, not just this one. So.
Yeah.
Lots of souvenirs, of course, there. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So much. We made it with 5 minutes overtime.
Um,
And tonight was
Was the library closed?
smoother than this afternoon,
Oh, yeah.
technology wise.
Oh, geez.
Yep.
but it didn't go too bad.
No, it was
I'll let you
fine.
take
It
care of
was
it.
great to hear about the trip.
Yeah, thank you.
thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Highly recommended.
Yeah.